After years of getting pushed back because it's possibly too graphic or too violent for moviegoers to see, The Green Inferno has finally come out. And it's really not as bad as I thought it would be. It's definitely not as gross or as graphic as a film you'd think would be that's been unable to get to theaters for several years because of that fact. Maybe it was because of a different reason it got pushed back a couple of years. So The Green Inferno is Eli Roth's homage to Cannibal Holocaust, which I have not seen Cannibal Holocaust, so I can't compare and contrast the two films. In The Green Inferno, a bunch of activists go to the rainforest to try to stop these bulldozers from tearing down a section of the rainforest where a very remote tribe is living. But something goes wrong, the plane crashes, they end up in the jungle where the tribe is, and surprise, surprise, the tribe is a bunch of cannibals. And so now the survivors of the plane crash are stuck with a bunch of cannibals and they have to find a way to escape. Very simple stuff. Now, to be fair, I haven't seen all of Eli Roth's movies. I know my aunt is a big fan of Eli Roth, but I think the only Eli Roth movies that I've actually seen is Cabin Fever, which I really enjoyed, and now The Green Inferno. I haven't seen the two Hostel movies, and I haven't seen, I think, his new movie called Knock Knock. Is that his? I think it is. I know Eli Roth does a lot of gore horror, and that's not something that I particularly like when it comes to horror. Now, I'm not a big fan of horror that's strictly just really gory and that's the horror of it. I like horror films that have a bit of a combination of all types of horror. But when it comes to films that are either zombies or cannibals, then yes, gore is going to be an important thing in the movie, and I understand its use. And for the most part, I think The Green Inferno was an okay movie. It's nothing that I would consider really bad, but it's nothing that I would consider really great or something that deserves the controversy it's had for not being in theaters. In all honesty, Cabin Fever is definitely a much gorier and much more disgusting, disturbing movie than The Green Inferno. But maybe it's because I've been so desensitized to gore horror to the point where it doesn't really affect me anymore. Like hell, there's certain movies on TV, on normal cable, that I can see that are more gory and more intense than The Green Inferno. Just like Walking Dead or Hannibal. I think the only time that the gore was exceptional in The Green Inferno was one of the victims that gets mauled and runs to the center of the cannibals' camp and just gets ripped apart by the cannibals. I think that's the only time it was exceptional, but that was the time where it actually felt more like a zombie movie rather than a cannibals movie. And so that was the only time in The Green Inferno where I thought that, okay, this was really, really good practical effects. The rest, while good practical effects, don't get me wrong, there were good practical effects, but none of the other elements, none of the other moments when people died felt really gory to the point of creepy and disturbing and deserving to be rated R. Well, except the eyeball sequence with the first person that's cut apart. But still, this is not a movie that's really for the faint of heart because still, it is a very graphic and gory movie. It's just not as gory as some of the television shows nowadays. Because let's face it, the first victim that the cannibals take is one of the guys that's in the cage, and you see the whole thing, them chopping his limbs off one by one, scooping his eyeballs out, and then cooking him like he's some big giant turkey. And then all of that is practical effects. But I think the only thing that truly creeped me out during The Green Inferno was the whole fact that the cannibals were just all so okay with this. There's just something really creepy about these cannibals just cooking these people like it's no big deal. Almost like they're just cooking a turkey for Thanksgiving dinner. It's just like they're just so nonchalant about the whole ordeal. And that's the really creepy and disturbing thing about this movie. And that really sent shivers down my spine. It was the only time in the movie when I was legitimately creeped out. Now, the overall story and the characters and the acting isn't really all that good. It's nothing I would consider really god-awful or bad. It's just your typical B horror movie flair. There's parts of the bad dialogue and the acting that felt like it was self-aware of the fact, but some of it could have been just that it was legitimately bad. Even though most of the first 30 minutes was pretty bad, it still kept me engaged in a way, and I still at least cared a little bit about the characters to actually feel for some of them when they actually died. But there are definitely certain moments throughout the movie that felt like it was just filler, and I think some of those could have easily been cut out to the point where this movie probably could have been just an hour long, period. Like, they could easily have taken out the scene when they're going down the river and suddenly someone needs a bathroom break, so they stop and they go take a bathroom break and then they come back to the boat, and then that's the whole scene. Then there's another scene when they're in the process of trying to escape the cannibal tribe, and suddenly one of the girls falls in the river and she's being swept up by the rapids, and then a guy goes and saves her, and then that's just the end of the scene because there's not really any tension through that scene. Even though she's getting swept up by the rapids, there's something that's very tensionless in that scene, and I never felt like she was in danger. I think that's one of the problems with the Green Inferno for me, from keeping it from being really good, is that even though I did care about the characters, even though some of them are stereotypical, obviously, there's something either genuine or something nice about the characters that kept me liking them, at least. I never really felt like they were in danger, which is very odd because usually when I care about a character in a horror movie, I fear for their life whenever they're in a dangerous situation. But when these characters were in dangerous situations, there was something about it that felt not tense. It just didn't feel like they were in danger even though they were getting killed. And maybe that's because of the fact that so many times it tries to add humor to it that makes the film feel a little bit more lighthearted than it should be. And maybe that's what's been throwing me off and why I never felt the characters were in danger. It's because there was these different humor moments and these different lighthearted moments that made it feel like a horror comedy. Maybe it was meant to be like that, but it was a little off-putting for me. Whenever there's an animal in the film, it's CGI animal, and it's really bad. I think the first time you see the jaguar, it's fine. It's in the distance. It's definitely out of place, but it's in the distance, and you don't really see much of it. The second time you see the jaguar, it's cartoony and out of place as hell. Not as cartoony or as out of place as the bear in Into the Grizzly Maze, but close to that. And then when you got a close-up of the jaguar, it looked like it tried to compensate itself by doing shaky cam so you don't notice how bad the CGI jaguar blends in with the environment, but you can still definitely tell. Then the CG ants were really goofy looking as well. Now there's a lot of attempts at humor in this movie, and while some of them did bring a smile to my face, it seemed like it was done in a way that was a little bit serious to the point where no one in the theater was laughing at all. Like there was like eight or nine of us in the theater and no one laughed throughout the whole movie. But that could be because some of the humor was just really just out of place and really bad. Like there's this one part where this person gets killed and suddenly the douche of the group just starts jerking off. And I'm like, what? What? It's just so random and out of place. Then there's a girl that gets sick and she has to poop and she has diarrhea, and that was supposed to be funny. But I don't know, I think the only moment where I actually did crack a smile during the humor is when they're trying to get the natives high so they can try to escape. And so they stuff one of the dead people with marijuana and try to get the natives high so when they cook her up and eat her, they get high. But then there's this joke that's actually kind of funny but kind of embarrassing at the same time, is when these cannibals start attacking this one character, this character goes, "Oh my god, they got the munchies!" And I'm just like, oh my god. Now this film is not only a tribute to one of Eli Roth's favorite horror films of all time, but there is a deeper meaning in the film that could easily be missed if you don't look it up. The characters that are getting eaten and killed in the movie are ultimately representations of social justice warriors. If you don't know what that is, look it up. It's a type of troll that could be on the internet. And because I knew that going into the film, it made me see the film in a different way. That still doesn't disguise the fact that the movie is ultimately average to begin with, but that little deeper meaning does heighten it a little bit. And this could have been me thinking too deeply on a cannibal film, but because I was thinking about the social justice warriors, I was thinking about some of the characters might just be other types of trolls through the movie. Yes, they do represent stereotypes of horror films, but there's some of them that felt like, hey, maybe this could have been another representation of a different troll on the internet. Like there's this one bigger, likable guy that is pretty endearing, but ultimately he's always butting in on people when they say something wrong, and he's almost like the fact checker troll. And so it made me think maybe some of these characters aren't just stereotypes, but also different types of trolls that could be on the internet. In the end, I did like the Green Inferno. I didn't like it as much as I thought I would. Some of it, I liked it because there was a bit of a deeper meaning in it. And some of the humor is really off-putting, and I didn't really feel as horrified with this film as I did with something like Cabin Fever. So ultimately, I'm going to give The Green Inferno 3 stars. Maybe it's a little bit more than it deserves, but ultimately, I still liked it. So have you seen The Green Inferno? What did you think about it? Go ahead and comment. If not, what is your favorite gory horror movie? As always, this is Bruce Gifford, and this was Just My Opinion.